Hello students, Dr. Everson here. I just wanted to go over the handout for your progress reports and share with you some examples from a student example from last semester. Um, because these are journal entries, I didn't feel 100% comfortable just sharing the actual document with you without the student's permission. So we're going to go over that in the handout together here. So I thought a screencast might be a good way to make sure we're all on the same page here. So first thing you need to do is go into Unit 3, and you'll see the Resources, Progress Report, and Service Logs folder here. Everything you need to do in this unit where we're working on your field work, these 2 weeks that we're really concentrating on doing our service, is in this folder. The most important thing, of course, is the Progress Report handout, which is the last thing I'm going to talk about here with the student example. But also, you need to make sure that you have completed the field study agreement, which is in the form of a quiz, and it just asks you to agree to the terms of the college's policy when it comes to field research and field study and field trips. And it just has a code of conduct and other things you need to be aware of as a student and your assumption of risk in participating in those activities. Make sure that you go through that handout carefully and agree to the terms. And if you cannot agree to the terms, you're going to have some real challenges doing your project. We'll have to have a pretty in-depth conversation with you about what you'll be doing, and the administration may or may not sign off on that. So I'm hoping that everybody will agree to the terms, and we could just move on from that. The other thing that you might want to be aware of is there's a media release form, and I bring this up now because if you're working with minors or in a situation where it's in a private space, if you're going to use images of those in your final report for the class, the final report at the very end, you need to get permissions, and so this media release form will help you with that. For the most part, if you're in a public space, you can take images, but and you're free to use them, but it's always a good idea to try and get permission and ask permission before you take somebody's picture. And I will say this, that the reports that you submit at the end of the summer here will greatly benefit by having at least 1 or 2 visuals of the place that you were at and what you were doing. So I do strongly encourage you to take pictures when you can and get some images to help sort of ground your report to the rest of the class. And now I'm going to talk about the Community Partner Service Log. So I'm opening this up. So this is just a handout that should download to your computer, and it's a Microsoft Word document. And as you can see, you just fill this out. It should be pretty straightforward. You need to have the name of the agency and partnership that's working with you, and the key individuals. You need to have a person who can sign off on this. You can't just sign off on your own work, obviously. You have to be working with a community partner. We've gone through this in your proposals and everything, but this needs to be nailed down very clearly. We need their full contact information, and then you fill out this material here, the dates for where you completed your activity, and you just repeat this as many times as needed. If you work several days, you'll have to fill this out, this section, for each of the days that you do your service. You describe what you did, the time you started, and all that sort of stuff. And if you have a different partner that you're working with on certain days, you fill out a completely different service log with the different contact information at the top. So hopefully this is straightforward. It's mostly a template. You're supposed to fill it out, and then when you've completed your service, you need to have this person sign. And then what we will do for your final service report, your progress report, is when we do this on campus, the students bring these packets in and they're signed. What I'll have you folks do is either scan them if you have that capability, that technology, and email them to me, or take images of them with your cell phones and send me the image files. So this is the verification that I know that you have gotten the signatures and everything that is needed. And you can also send me the completed forms as just the document without the signatures, but then get a photograph of the signatures. We'll work it all out. But the main thing is you need to make sure that this part of your report is completely filled out and that it represents the 15 hours of service that you're supposed to be completing. Let's go back to Unit 3 and look at the resources and the progress report that is the main element of what you need to be completing during this service activity. And I'm going to go over this in some detail and point to a student example. So here we have in the progress report a couple of points I would really like to stress. So the service logs that I was just speaking about, you'll see that there's a note here that says Part 1 Community Service Log, minimum 15 hours accounted for. Now, this report, the progress report, is worth 100 points. So this report is worth 100 points, and it's the least weighted of all the reports you're doing in the class. And to be honest, what I'm really asking you to do is to capture what happens in your service activities. And so it may not seem like it to you, but this progress report is really for you. You get points for doing it, but it's mostly just you doing a series of sort of structured journal entries that will hopefully capture your experiences fully so that you have good material. Much of this can be used directly in your final report. So the material you're putting together here, you should be able to use parts of this for your final report. That's the goal. So the first part is your community service log, which I was just showing you how to fill that out. Now you'll submit these, and if these are out of order, if they're not complete, if you don't have the signatures, that's going to cause you to have a reduction in your service hours. These need to be verified service hours. So what you do is you fill that out as completely as you can, and assuming you do all your hours and you have all your signatures, great. If you don't have all your hours, you'll notice down here on the grading section that you lose 10 points from this overall report for each hour that you miss. So yes, if I've had students turn in logs and they've only done 7 hours, and boy, that's a 70-point hit on a 100-point report, obviously that's going to hurt you a great deal. So make sure that you have that completed, and that's the grading scheme that will be used for that. I mentioned this handout is really designed to structure your approach to the field service so that you're aware and you're not missing things and missing opportunities about what to write and record and then report back in your final big report at the end of the course. And so you'll notice that the first thing you do before you start your service, and this is what I asked you all to do last week, was to go through these exercises on page 34 and 35 in Learning Through Serving. And these are the checklists that ask you to anticipate some of your questions and concerns that you have before going into your service. And there's a few other chapters that I asked you guys to look over, Chapter 7, Chapter 9, how to troubleshoot problems. All these sort of things are very important background we've been doing in the last couple weeks to prepare you, because once you get on site, you have to be ready to both record and get down the information that you'll need for your report and do your service, and also overcome the issues and obstacles that might come up. So you'll notice that now we get into the service journal. So this is the part of the handout that you need to pay close attention to. Let me stress this, these are journal entries, so these are your opinions, they're your reflection. Do your best to write in complete sentences, have a minimum amount of surface errors and things like that. But other than that, these are yours. They're going to be graded mostly for having completed this material when you turn in this progress report. So just be honest, be open with what you're trying to say. The first entry that I'm asking you to post here in the service journal is, and these are all roughly around 200 words, is in response to those service pre-service checklists. How are you feeling? Where are you at in this regard? And then you'll notice entries 2 through 5. And I think when you do your report, I'll show you a student report here in a second. You want to do it in roughly this sort of sequence and order. 2 through 5. Each of these are the triple entry journal format on page 6.4 or on page 109 in your book. And this simply asks you to divide up the experiences into these 3 areas to help sort of establish a reflection. You can do this triple entry journal off to the side and then put the text into your journal if you want. It doesn't matter to me how you do it, but I am asking you to follow that format from your book on page 109 for the triple entry. And then the last several entries, entries 6 through 10, these are open-ended. You just write about anything that you can think of in regards to experience. I do want these to be separate entries. I want them to be over the course of your service, not all done at the last minute or on one day. That's the goal here anyway. They should be spread out, and they should be about 200 words each. So if you do your math here, you'll notice that there are 10 entries, about 200 words each, in this journal, and that's 2,000 words, and that's a lot of writing. But remember, this is reflective writing. It's open-ended. You just need to sit down and do the work and record your thoughts and observations. It doesn't have to be gold at this point. You're going to mine from this gold later and put it into your final report, the parts that make most sense in what you're trying to report in the final document that you submit to the class. So the material that you use here actually can wind up being used in your final report. And I'm really just looking to see that you've completed the entries fully and you're responding to the prompts as fully as you can. You're doing the triple entry on some of those. You're doing the open-ended entries on the others. And as long as you're doing that, you should be getting full points on those. And then part 3, this is the final reflection. 9.3 is assessing your journey. And this is in that section at the end of the chapter on what happens when you confront problems and issues and how you overcome those. And as I've mentioned many times, part of our inquiry and part of our learning for this course is how well do we conduct problem solving and overcome issues and obstacles in the course. And the triple entry journal that I asked you to look at further for some of the entries in your part 2 of the report, that's the same thing. That's a chapter that's focusing on deep reflection. So everything here is focusing on getting you to express a lesson, something that you learned, some sort of element of growth over the course of the project. If your service project didn't turn out exactly like you had hoped, that's fine. You just write and reflect about that. I hope I'm stressing that enough that that's what I really want you to do in these reports, is just get down what the problems were and how you overcame them or didn't overcome them and how that makes you feel. Just follow the instructions as carefully as you can in the handout. So now let's take a look at an actual student example from last semester. I'm looking at part 2. So this is the service journal. Just a reminder, the first entry asks you to do some of that pre-service stuff and reflect upon it. Then you have to have 4 entries that use the triple entry journal for deep reflection element from page 109 in your book. And then you have the last 5 entries are the open-ended ones that you can write about anything you want. So here's the student example that I have from last semester. And so this was Cassidy. She worked with a partner, and they each submitted their own journals, obviously, and they went to the nursing home. And as you can see, her first entry is sort of a reflection or an overview. She's got the date clearly marked. That's what is very important, that you mark the time when these things happen. And she's going over the pre-service checklist, and she just does some reflection. And you'll notice that these are over 200 words each, so these entries are fine. And then you'll notice that she did sort of an open-ended entry here where she's just reflecting on the bingo night that they were involved with. And then she intersperses these with these triple entry experiences. She didn't do the triple entry experiences one after the other. She interspersed them all through her 10 postings. So she's got the 4 triple entries, and she's got several other dates that are listed. See how she did this? April 9th, a crazy day. April 9th, triple entry experience after attending the church at Crestview today. Jessica and I had the opportunity to participate in exercise, and she goes over the triple entry. And she's got some reflection here about what the last day was like. So she has all those elements fully outlined with the dates. And then at the very end, she has the full reflection. Look at this. This is what I want to stress. This is 8 pages, single-spaced. So that gives you some sense about the length of these journal entries. She's done a nice job in the reflection. She's followed the instructions from the handout. She has the final reflection at the end where she wraps everything up. this is a good example of a student report that's very complete in the proper format, and I hope that everybody follows roughly this same format when you do your reports.